What is up? Welcome back to another video. This video took me a lot longer to record than I wanted to. See, the problem was I could not find this camera, and I looked just about everywhere I could think to look. High, low, everywhere, even places that I wouldn't put a camera, but I still looked because I really wanted to make this video. And then it dawned on me. I have this case, and this case I sometimes use to transport cameras if I'm going to a shoot or just, driving around or whatever. So I find the case, I open it up, and sure enough, there it is. And so here we are to talk about the camera, which of course is the CONTAX RTS. Now, CONTAX as a brand is very interesting. It has a lineage that rivals that of even Leica. They've been around since just about the dawn of cameras and still cameras. As you may know, is a German brand, and as such, it's kind of known for its refined quality and for its premium cameras and things of that nature. Early to mid 20th century, there was a war. There was a war that happened, and in fact, Germany played a pivotal role in that war, and then they subsequently lost. Now, history buffs out there might remember that that happened, so I'm kind of preaching to the choir, but you also may know that Germany kind of split. There was two sides of it. There was the eastern side, which kind of became under Soviet control, and there was the western side, which was more democratic control, I guess. I don't know if there was like a clear delineation there, but it was like, America, Britain, France kind of controlled the western side, and the east was kind of controlled by the Soviets. It was a whole thing. And in that time period, there was a bit of a lack of willingness for certain big parties in the market, such as the American market, wanting to invest in German goods because there was a little bit of a bad taste in their mouth, so to speak. Beyond just the optics, there was also the obvious issue with certain areas not being able to source raw materials to make cameras, supply chain failure, exporting, importing things, and so on and so forth. Now, just because some people weren't buying or couldn't buy German film cameras doesn't mean they didn't want film cameras anyway. So that's where Japan really stepped up to the plate and started producing more cameras. More brands started popping up. That's where we see the Pentax, Nikon, Canon, Olympus, Minolta. All of these renowned brands really rise to prominence. And some of the brands even did something clever, where they linked up with the German manufacturers and used the skill set, the knowledge that these German film camera companies had through their many decades of development. They used that knowledge, and then they used the Japanese ability to produce things, and they kind of met up together, and they partnered up, and they went out on the dance floor, and they made cameras together. And we saw this in some instances with Minolta and Leica producing cameras like the R3 to the R6 series, or the Minolta CL. But one of the things that I want to focus on today is the CONTAX and Yashica melding. As I mentioned, CONTAX had a renowned presence in the film photography community. They've been making cameras for a long time. It wasn't until 1975, and maybe a little bit before then, that Yashica produced this gem, the RTS. The internal systems were designed by a gentleman of the name of Dr. Katsuya Sugaya. I don't know how to pronounce the name, so I apologize if I butchered it. I will put it down here. Brilliant guy who designed the internals of the system, and the externals of this camera were actually designed by Porsche, the car company. So this is kind of the perfect melding of that German engineering and uniqueness and the Japanese construction, reliability, and electronics. There are a few caveats with this. This was the kind of flagship camera for the CONTAX Yashica lens mount, which is not a super common lens mount. In fact, it's very hard to find a variety of lenses for that mount and, keep it affordable. So right now I have the Solagore 20 to 80 on here that I actually got for free. You can check that out in the video up there. The CY mount does have access to many Carl Zeiss lenses because, again, this is kind of kind of not a German camera. Carl Zeiss is a kind of German company producing optics for however long. It is a renowned name, and for good reason. They have very high quality lenses. Normally what I would do is I'd take something like this, pair it up against something like a Nikon FM2, FE2, and in that kind of price range, in that kind of capability, and be like, these are how they're the same, or these are how they're different. But in all reality, this doesn't really work in that space. You see, in FE2 and FM2, I could see that being taken onto like the top of a snowy mountain landscape to capture like a once-in-a-lifetime image. In fact, Secret Life of Walter Mitty, Sean Penn, not Sean Bean, has a Nikon F3T, which is one of the most beautiful cameras ever made, and he is camping out trying to take a picture of a snow leopard. Fantastic scene from a fantastic movie. Also, there was a film that was shot kind of in this area, I think over there. Benicio del Toro's in it, and The Hunted or The Hunter or something. Benicio del Toro and Gary Oldman? No. Tommy Lee Jones. Tommy Lee Jones and Benicio del Toro. And Benicio del Toro like runs out of a bathroom under the bridge, I think over there. Doesn't matter, I'm just here and I'm thinking about it. The Nikon has an air of professionalism, ruggedness to it. You can see this in all the images of Nikon Fs in the Vietnam War, the Korean War, Nikon F2s, and all sorts of war-like environments. Even Leicas, to a certain degree, have been used in that professional, rugged environment because they have some sort of reliability to them, some sort of mechanical dependability to it. This camera does not have that. This camera reminds me of something that you would see in the hands of a high-fashion photographer in a clothes set, and he's taking pictures of clothes that just confuse you and boggle the mind as to why anybody would want to wear that, but he's taking pictures with a CONTAX RTS. That's the world in which this really exists well in. It's not for press photographers, it's not for the front lines, it's not for any sort of disaster zone. There's so many elements about this camera that I think make it a uniquely CONTAX camera. And when I say CONTAX, think of me saying it in all caps, because that's what this camera is meant to be read in, is all caps. And I think that boldness, that reintroduction of the brand that was dormant for however many years, I think really plays out in the styling of the system. There is so much about this that is unique to just this camera in ways that I can't really see in other systems, such as, for instance, the most obvious one is your shutter speed selection is on the left side of the camera. Now, typically, if it isn't on the lens mount itself, like a Olympus system or a Nichromat, it's on the right side, right here, like you've seen on pretty much every Pentax system, every Canon camera. But this one, it's on this side. And there's no real rationale for that, except for the fact that it is. And it's unique and it's interesting. The auto setting on this side as well features a little housing for your rewind knob, which is very clever and kind of thoughtful. And on the right side of the camera, we have what appears to just be this giant housing for your exposure compensation. And a lot of cameras would normally take the back seat, but in this one, it has this prime real estate for reasons. And then also on this little housing, have a shutter button, which is about as light as a feather slowly falling onto snow-covered ground. It doesn't take much to initiate the shutter, and in fact it's so light that you can't actually get a meter reading, so they put a separate button on the front here so you can get an idea of what your shutter speed is going to be like if you're on the auto setting, or what settings you need to adjust in order to achieve accurate exposure. It's a little bit of a unique system, and on one hand that's cool, like we like things that are a little bit different here, but on the other hand it does make it a little bit challenging to take the lessons learned in shooting something like a Nikon system, and then this is a little bit of a different language. But it's not so different in which you don't know how to use it, it's just a unique thing. And I think that that adds to the kind of premier quality to it. This is a premium system, this is unique, this is different. It doesn't care what you know about other cameras, this is different. It's high fashion. it's CONTAX. It does have a cloth shutter that can achieve a top shutter speed of 1/2000th of a second, which is incredibly fast. And you can also go down to 4 seconds as well as 8 bulbs. This does have one of my favorite frame counters. It's placed beautifully. And the advanced system is really unique because underneath it, it doesn't have these smooth ball bearings of the F3, of this gliding your hand through like a glacial lake smoothness to it. There's this gearing system underneath that is incredibly unique and something I don't think I've seen in any other camera. On top of that, the advanced throw feels good in the hand. There's enough that feedback. The shutter itself sounds fantastic. And I think the later iteration of this, the RTS2, upgraded to a titanium shutter. This is the cloth shutter. There are a few other features on this, such as a self-timer and a stop-down lever as well, which is always a nice feature. And on this side, you have a mirror up switch, which is helpful for longer exposure things and whatever else you want to do with it. The viewfinder, though, is something I really want to make note of because it's great. The CONTAX S2 had a similar viewfindering system where it was very bright, very vivid, and very wide. It's all there. I'm not trying to like squint and see what I can see. It's like ultra high def. But through the viewfinder, you not only get your aperture, which is set with a little node that sits over what aperture you're at, but you also get another little node for your shutter speed. And of course an LED system, which will show you what shutter speed you need to be at. But those are like the little things that I really value about a system like this. Looking through, seeing everything that you need to see, and then making decisions based on that. And the final thing that I want to say is when I got this camera, it actually came with a strap, and the strap has these little buttons on it that say CONTAX on it, which I think is hilarious. The size and the bulkiness of this camera does kind of exclude it in some ways, because this isn't something that I'd want to take with me with other camera systems. It's kind of a sole camera thing. It's big, okay? It's big, it's clunky, and then obviously this lens I have on here is a pretty hefty third-party zoom lens, which doesn't help out the size and the weight of this, but even without the lens, this still does have quite a bit of presence. Again, it's very bold, it's very declarative, it's great, but it's very pronounced. Even slapping a prime on here, though, it does have quite a profile, but I think that it really, again, goes back to the use case of this system. This isn't something that I would want to throw in a bag with a bunch of other cameras and just kind of go touting around with. This is something that I would want to have locked down on a tripod when I'm shooting in like a closed studio set, something that I've perfectly manufactured the lighting of. Everything has like a express purpose as to why it's there. And I'm going to take a few photos with my CONTAX RTS because that's what this camera is for. This is in my mind, perfect studio camera. But that being said, I still think it works in an environment such as this. You know, it's a little bit overcast, it's kind of rainy out right now. I still feel like this camera works. I want to take this camera out with me. Like, I want to just use this camera. I want to be able to master this system. I like the way it feels in the hand. I like the way it looks because it has this presence that could lead someone to think, if they saw me carrying this, wow, that guy looks like he knows what he's doing. That's a big professional camera system. Even though it has a Solagore lens, nobody cares about that because it says CONTAX on it. And CONTAX sounds cool, it sounds impressive, it sounds masculine, it sounds like, you know, I'm gonna go out after this and like chop down a tree or something with my camera. But I'm not gonna be able to because I feel like this would be absolutely destroyed. Regardless of all that hyperbole though, I do think that this camera has that weight to it. It has that presence. That this isn't like a necessarily pretty camera or a beautifully designed camera. This isn't the Asahi Flex where it looks like it was crafted by somebody who works normally with limestone and they just spent the day to like carve something out of steel. This is a cool camera. This looks like it was made out of leather and, you know, it smells like cigarettes and maybe it has a Harley that they drive on the weekends. You know, it's a very cool, elite system in a way that just is so goofy because it's a fucking film camera. But still, I look at this and I just think, wow, like this is cool. It looks like it comes from the same world as the Porsche. It just has that air. A camera like this has a finance job that doesn't make any sense to you, but they get paid a shitload and they have like penthouse suite. That's what this camera is. I have so many other cameras that are better than this. I have so many other cameras that I'd rather shoot than this, but I have no camera that does what this does, which is just put a smile on my face for all of the dumb reasons that I just listed. if you're in the market for a camera and you got like a couple $100 to throw around, the CONTAX RTS is a fantastic option. It has the same leatherette as the S2, in which there's not a significant amount of texturing in which to benefit grip, but it has the smooth plushness of it, where it just feels like memory foam. It feels good in the hand, and again, really calls back to that. This is not meant to be used in an environment such as this, but I'm out here with it. I really do love it. So thank you very much for watching. Appreciate it as always. Like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel. Have you shot with an RTS? What did you think of it? Did you like it as much as I did? Probably not. But yeah, anyway, thanks for watching. This is stupid. I'll talk to you later.